Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate prose. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. There it is. So we are official. This is session 88. Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. An amazing guest this evening. Dr. Amy Saltzman is with us. We'll get to her bio here shortly. As always, brought to you by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. Session 88 already. I looked at the calendar today. It's the end of August somehow. And then numerous social media posts that said, did anybody else blink and August was gone? That's the way it feels. This one seems to have flown by, but this one you'll want to listen to probably on repeat. As a holistic physician, mindfulness coach, longtime athlete, devoted student of transformation, wife, mother, and occasional poet, Dr. Amy Saltzman's passion is supporting people of all ages in enhancing their health, experiencing joy, and finding flow, or perhaps more accurately, letting flow find them. Her peers have recognized her as a visionary and pioneer in the domains of mindfulness for athletes, coaches, and other high performers, as well as for kids, teens, parents, teachers, human beings. Her current passion is working and playing with athletes of all ages and abilities, including youth athletes, Division I athletes, including an athlete suffering from multiple injuries who went on to become an NCAA Division I MVP, multiple national champions. She shares mindfulness with university teams and athletic departments. In addition, she offers mindfulness coaching and holistic medical care to children, adolescents, their parents, and professionals in her office. Before moving to Santa Barbara, California, she worked with employees and execs from Apple, Google, Stanford, Square, Gene Tech, and plenty more. To support others in discovering the joy and peace of the still, quiet place, Dr. Amy Saltzman has written 3.5 books: A Still Quiet Place for Athletes, Mindfulness Skills for Achieving Peak Performance and Finding Flow in Sports and in Life; A Still Quiet Place for Teens, a mindfulness workbook to ease stress and difficult emotions; A Still Quiet Place, a mindfulness program for teaching children and adolescents to ease stress and difficult emotion. It is my extreme pleasure to host Dr. Amy Saltzman. Welcome aboard this Sunday night.
Happy to be here. Happy to chat with you, James.
I don't want to give away too many secrets about all the master plans that we're developing in the background, but I do want to give away all the secrets of how you've become this master of mindfulness and how this emanates into the universe around you, how you found your way to this, how it found its way to you, and see where we'll take this. But before we get there, it would be an honor as always, and I know you're itching to get to it anyway, because this is how we start all of our meetings. If you would be so kind as to lead us in a short practice to start this conversation off, and then we can navigate from there.
Awesome. James knows I'm a practice junkie, so this is my favorite part. So if you're willing, sitting and closing your eyes. If you prefer not to, you can just rest your gaze on a neutral spot in front of you. And resting your attention on the sensations of the breath in the belly. So feeling the belly expand with the in-breath and release with the out-breath. And perhaps calling back all the little tendrils of attention and allowing your full attention to rest on the sensations of the breath in the belly. And maybe you can notice the first sip and very beginning of the expansion of the in-breath all the way through to where the breath is still. And maybe you can notice the first whisper and release of the out-breath all the way through to where the breath is still. And now perhaps you can let your mind rest in that still, quiet place between the in-breath and the out-breath. And rest again in the second still, quiet place between the out-breath and the in-breath. Allowing yourself to soften into the stillness and quietness that's always with you. And perhaps realizing that this stillness and quietness is with you when you're breathing in, with you when the breath is still, with you when you're breathing out, with you when the breath is still, with you when you're talking or emailing or arguing or laughing, when you feel excited, sad, angry, happy. This stillness and quietness is always inside of you, and you can find it simply by resting your attention on the breath. So I'm going to give you just a minute to rest your attention on the breath with no talking, and then I'll guide you out and we'll continue. So when you're ready, in your own time, perhaps checking in with yourself, noticing how your body, your mind, and your heart are in this moment. And then when you're ready, taking 3 slow, deep breaths. And opening your eyes and expanding your attention to include the group.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel like we could wrap it up there, but there's so much that we can take from this. In the last few weeks, the last few months, we've had the opportunity to connect and connect regularly. And not one of our meetings goes by without somebody leading a practice to start the meeting and without jamming it down anybody's throat. That truly does set the intention for listening, because when we go within, we can go without a little bit further and hear and experience the environment around us that little bit more. And I often, every time, I'm amazed by just how much more receptive I am after a brief practice like that to transition into a meeting or into a conversation, or, with the anxiousness that comes with, where is this conversation going to go and how is it going to flow? Well, it's going to flow a whole lot smoother and a whole lot better with a practice to ease our way in and to find it from within. So thank you again for that. The stillness, the still quiet place between the out breath, between the in breath. These are amazing places. The space between thinking and thought. This is where flow happens. This is flow. When did this become a focal point for you, or how did mindfulness find you? And perhaps we'll just kind of bat this thing around for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think there's two answers. So the first answer is when I was tween, I was a competitive gymnast, and I really do feel that that was my first mindful practice, even though I didn't know that word at that time, and it certainly wasn't in the lexicon the way it is now at that time. And then the second one won't surprise you either, because really what happened is I transitioned in my sophomore year of college from being a competitive gymnast to a competitive cyclist after some injuries. And then I got hit by a car. I had a whole lot of downtime because I wasn't riding my bike 3 hours a day. And one of the things that I did was to send away for information to the American Holistic Medical Association. And I got back all of their information, including their annual conference. And I had missed every deadline for registration, for housing, for scholarships, you name it, I missed it. But at the last moment, someone dropped out and I got her registration, her housing, and her scholarship. So I ended up at the American Holistic Medical Association. When I left that meeting, I sent them a note saying what I thought they could do to maintain the holism in students, medical students and residents. And by June of that year, I was on the board of the American Holistic Medical Association as their student trustee. And that was just about the time that the Bill Moyers Healing and the Mind series came out. And once I saw what was then called the Stress Reduction Clinic at the University of Massachusetts, I applied to go there and study with John Kabat-Zinn. And so then I began teaching patients with chronic pain and chronic illness, including doing a large research study. Then when I became a parent, I started teaching parents. Then one day when my son was upset, I asked him, not really knowing what I was going to do, if he wanted to do a feelings meditation. I started teaching to children and adolescents, which I think really honed my teaching to make it very simple, because kids don't want to be super theoretical. And then in recent years, I've returned to combining my love of athletics and sports with my love for mindfulness.
Yeah, no, an amazing journey and sort of a stunning capture of how this spills out. I navigating a lot of those channels, obviously, you know, some of those, parenthood and, working with other colleagues and working within our own space, and certainly working with athletes. And I think you touched on it in your own experience, having perhaps done mindfulness, but not knowing that that's what it was, or that's what it could be called. This idea of intention, focus, some of these other words that are utilized in the sporting space to harness skill or enhance performance. What has the entry been like for you I suppose, working in the athletic space. And the only reason I ask that is that's obviously near and dear to my heart. And our audience is, generally speaking, practitioners who work with student athletes or athletes in general. Getting somebody to do a bunch of ankle exercises because their ankle is injured is pretty straightforward, or some knee stuff to support their hip, or whatever the case might be. There's an area here, I think, that lacks, and that is sort of taking care of what's going on in that still quiet place, that place between the two ears. We see it on a daily basis with our athletes, in that they have a shooting coach, a speed coach, a skating coach, a power skating coach, a nutritionist. They come to us for physical well-being, which, we entangle some other pieces maybe without them knowing. But these other pieces. So where does this lay on the spectrum of things when you're working with athletes, when you're working with human beings, I suppose, like what do you feel is typically the barrier to entry there for most?
Well, it's interesting because, I think there's these various phrases and memes that you see about, athletics is X% physical and X% mental. And, first of all, it's a little bit crazy that we separate them. And second of all, I think people are beginning to appreciate that, at any competitive level, the physical and the X's and O's are often pretty similar. And so the place where you can gain some additional benefit is learning ways to work with the mind and the heart, learning ways to handle adversity, learning ways to recover from injury. And this, James, but I don't know if your audience necessarily knows it. I mean, there's good data now to show that mindfulness prevents injury and improves rehab post-injury. And I do think people are becoming more and more aware of the mental, emotional component of performance. I think we have people to thank for that. In the US, it would be Kevin Love and Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. But I think the conversation is definitely becoming more normal, right? So that a mindfulness performance coach would be equivalent to having a strength coach or a speed coach or a shooting coach. And that if you truly want to excel, you will include that in your repertoire.
Yeah, 100%. And not only in the mental health side of things, but in sort of this being in tune. If you watch that Save the Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and you hear about George Mumford, and he had worked with the Lakers and the Bulls and whoever, but there's no way to enhance somebody else's performance if they're not willing to take on a large part of enhancing their own performance. And that has to start with what's between their ears, which filters out, I think. It was Yogi Berra. I'm a big baseball guy as well, but it was Yogi Berra who stated, baseball is 90% mental, the other half is physical. And I thought that part of it is just like the Yogi Berraism was always a good one, and that one seems to be captured. And I think you're right. I think it's becoming a little bit more normal to hear about this in sports and hear about mindfulness as a practice that is more regularly accessible and readily available. Steve Kerr and Golden State, the Warriors, have this mindfulness as one of their, I believe they have 4 pillars of excellence within their organization, and mindfulness is one of them. Like it's a beautiful thing that this is surfacing in these high levels, and hopefully filters down into some of those I don't want to say lesser levels, but younger athletes, and perhaps down into the foundation of what sport is as kids begin to pick up the intensity or volume of competition. They can enhance this other side of things.
Yeah, and George is a dear friend of mine, and the Warriors' core values are mindfulness, joy, compassion, and competition. And actually, competition comes last.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful statement when you look at the success that they've had and the athletes that they have there, and yeah, some really accessible pieces through them. So let's go back in time a little bit. Just want to take people through your athletic journey, starting out as a gymnast and being sort of perhaps unaware of how aware you were. Gymnastics at a competitive level early in your teenage years, we can probably throw that on par with hockey here in Canada, perhaps, or in this area where hockey, everybody is going to make the NHL at 9 and 10. And we start compounding practice with more skating and more drills and more time on ice. In your own personal navigation of sport, and then now having a mindful practice and looking on sport sort of from a bird's eye view, how does that differ? Your experience in the moment, and then now looking at sports sort of generally speaking in terms of, I don't know, overloadedness or volume or intensity of competition, or putting competition as the first pillar in most people's experience with sport.
Right. Oh, I think I was really lucky because for a couple of reasons. I had a truly excellent coach, and it wasn't really almost until my kids were in sports that I got to realize how exceptional he was. But he always brought out the best in everyone, no matter what their level was. He also happened to be an exercise physiologist, so he taught the beginners our muscles, the intermediate our bones, and the advanced kids learned system, like full systems. So that's where part of my love of the body came from.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And you couldn't, if you had the skills, but you hadn't learned your anatomy and physiology, you actually couldn't move forward. So that was pretty exceptional. And then he was just a loving, supportive, exuberant man. And my parents let me do it because I wanted to do it. I was the one who said, I want to go 5 days a week. When I could finally drive, like I'll drive myself to the gym, I'll do my homework at the gym, I'll take a little nap, I'll eat my dinner, or I'll train, I'll come home. And unfortunately, I think both of those things are in shorter and shorter supply these days. Parents are pushing kids, coaches are pushing kids, and kids are A, getting over training injuries, and B, losing their love of the game. And so not only do I like teaching mindfulness to athletes, but I also like teaching mindfulness to parents and to coaches so that they can at least be aware of their own agendas and where maybe they're not, the difference between supporting an athlete and pushing an athlete. And there's healthy pushing from a coach side, but we need to know where the line is.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a tough one to navigate at times, and it's tough to be in those scenarios as the athlete when you're in your early teens or preteen years. You go to the rink, or you go to the diamond, or you go to the mat, expecting that everybody has your best interest at heart, and that you need to pour in all this time and effort, or it's the only way. I think here, taking some time away from the sporting field, from the sidelines, from the practice, and enhancing something like mindfulness as a group, or mindfulness as you've already mentioned, a preventative strategy or an injury deterrence strategy from our standpoint as therapeutic or as practitioners. We end up falling into the trap fairly regularly of being reactive, of once an injury happens, that's when we're on. And getting ahead and front loading this. Is this something that you would recommend sort of across the board, being built in early on? And I don't mean that from like everybody should do this. And I know you're not standing on a soapbox. You have years and years of experience here. You've built this in so many amazing places. What would you say for somebody who's, where would you say this fits? I suppose is a better question.
I mean, I think there is a way that I would gently say that everyone should do this. Mm-hmm. But because mindfulness is responsive, I'm never going to force someone, because that's antithetical to the whole idea of it to begin with. Right. But building these skills and layering these skills the same way that we build layer skating skills and shooting skills and defensive skills in hockey, and first you're working as an individual, and then you're working maybe with your line, and then you're working with the group that's on the ice, and then maybe you're working with the team. Like, I do think that there are ways that you can layer this in. Really, I joke that I teach mindfulness for people from 3 to 93. Like, you can start layering this in very early in simple, fun, joyful ways, so that people have what I would say. I know you don't love this word, but I'm going to use it anyways, and you can tweak it in a minute. Flexibility, strength, and mental and emotional flexibility, strength, and endurance, just in the same way that they have physical flexibility, strength, and endurance. And I think if you put those all together and you don't overemphasize the flexibility, we're probably okay.
We'll leave it at that. We won't get into my hang-ups with certain parts of the vernacular, but I think it's amazing. And you talk like dropping it in joyfully and in a manner that is accessible at 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 and 11 and 12. What if we flip it on its head and we get to 25, 30? We've already made it to this point without this mindful practice. So like, why would I need it now? I'm already in the big leagues. I'm already making $1 million every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. This is an entry point where we have discussions on a regular basis, with the athletes that we work with, and we're not using mindfulness as the terminology. We're simply saying, if you can get better by going within, is that not the thing that you want to do? Because you can't take me with you. You can't take your coaching staff with you everywhere you go. But if you go and you're better, you're enhanced, or continue to grow, is that a thing that you can take with you? Is that then? Yeah. Is that?
So I think there's a couple things. I mean, I said 3 to 93. So I think it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a few doorways in for, older athletes, however we want to define that. Let's just define it for now as post high school.
Sure.
First they want to perform at their best, and there's proven data to show that this will enhance your performance, enhance your ability to find flow, decrease stress and anxiety, including performance anxiety. So that's one doorway in. The other
Mm-hmm.
doorway in is a lot of them are really, they look okay on the outside, right? And you're saying like the $1 million contract, and they're already playing in the pros, but a lot of them are crumbling on the inside because they didn't learn any of these skills for resilience and self-care and positive, self-talk, or at least minimizing the negative self-talk when they were young. And so they're really suffering. And so that can be a doorway in. And now the other thing is that it is becoming more popular. I don't have my Canadian slide set up, but there are multiple professional Canadian hockey players now who are using it. A good portion of the women's national team in soccer in the US is using it. Simone Biles is using it. Sam McCulloch, who's a US gymnast, is using it. Novak Djokovic is using it. So, I mean, I think it's gaining momentum in the same way that if you look back, to, like, I watched the thing for the 1936 Olympics where the Olympians got on this boat, right, from North America, and ate and smoked and whatever, and didn't really train for the however long the passage was to get to the Olympics. And we don't do that anymore. We know that you don't smoke and eat those things anymore. And I think that mindfulness is coming in knowing that it's a part of not only enhancing your performance, but enhancing your life. And enhancing the transition from sport to life. So, I mean, it can be a support at whatever stage you happen to be at.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that sort of summarizes, that is the thesis of most discussions that I'm having these days, is it's applicable across the board. It does need a receiver on the other end. There's no way, there's no doubt about it. If you put up a roadblock, it's tough to get through no matter what. But you talk about performance enhancers, you look at sort of smoking and drinking on the ship going across in the 30s. And then we look at sort of anabolics, and then we look at performance enhancers, and then we put in all these things that we're pouring in from the external environment into our internal environment to enhance our performance. And here we have perhaps the greatest natural legal steroid or performance enhancing non-drug that anybody can possibly use, and we all carry it. We all experience it with the intro here, with a breath exercise, with a quiet, still place that we can go to in a time of stress or a time of extreme joy, and come back to that central piece. And I think you summarized it beautifully, and you always do, and you managed to drive home some points that I think a lot of practitioners can utilize as well. And so when it comes to our world as practitioners, as strength coaches and therapists and yoga coaches, and I don't know, everybody and their aunt and uncle seem to be life coaches these days, but having a mindful practice is one unto one's own as much as it is anything else. So when it comes to finding somebody to learn mindfulness from or with, there's not much criteria out there. Just as like I could take a weekend course and then go cover 12 and 13-year-olds playing hockey as a therapist, because I took the weekend course, right? I know how to like put a Band-Aid on, and that's pretty much it. No, I don't mean to talk down. I just mean like in comparison to 8 years of school or 6 years of school. So as a mindfulness coach, as an MD here of a holistic approach to care, where does a mindful coach draw from? What are the credentials? What are the experience? I think is the big one for you and I, and for everybody in this realm.
Yeah.
From your side.
I'm just smiling because this is one of my 3 soapbox issues, and if I had to pick one, it would be the one.
Absolutely. Climb on.
So
we need this.
I feel very strongly that if you're looking for someone to teach you mindfulness, or if you want someone to teach you, if you want to teach mindfulness to others, you absolutely need to have your own devoted personal practice. And to me, that means 30 minutes of formal sitting 6 days a week. I realize life is life. And, I give myself and everyone else a hall pass for 1 day a week, because maybe you have to take your dog to the vet or your kid to the dentist or whatever. And it needs to show up in how the person's living and being and interacting. You can feel it. I've gotten on some calls with some people who are like, oh yeah, I have a mindfulness practice, and they're going like 5,000 miles a minute, and they're all over. And it's like, and we all have those days and those moments, but having your own committed practice, and honestly being in community so that people are calling you on your stuff, and then being willing to apply it to the difficult moments in your own life. So if you're having an argument with a teammate, or you're having an argument with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you're struggling in school, or you get injured, like you want to be able to see it showing up in the person's life moment by moment. And I want to be clear that even with more than 30 years now of devoted practice, it doesn't mean that I'm always skillful or responsive all the time. There are still things that throw me off. It takes something big at this point, but you know, we want to have compassion also for those moments of humanity and not have people pretending that they're calm when they're not calm. Like mindfulness, my definition of mindfulness is paying attention here and now with kindness and curiosity so that we can choose our behavior. It doesn't mean being calm or blissed out or never getting angry. It means being aware, wow, I'm really angry right now. I can feel it in my body. I'm aware of that. And now, what do I want to do for myself or in the external environment? Right? Because there are places where it's healthy and appropriate to be angry. And then the question is, how do you express it?
Absolutely.
So it's not like you just want to sit there and be a blissed out blob. That's not what we're inviting. It's like, how do you respond skillfully to this moment?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I see this on a regular basis as well as a great fit in that blissful space or that quiet space as a recovery tool, right? But I also see this marketed as a recovery tool, and I just feel like it's almost like you said, sort of antithetical in terms of like you're marketing mindfulness, and this is something that is a lot of people are marketing this as a strategy that they can sell. And I feel like this is a strategy that everybody can utilize, but it needs to come from a place, like you mentioned, of experience, a place of daily practice, and a place of a teacher who has gone to some dark and scary places, perhaps on their own. Is that an element? And I don't mean that everybody needs to experience, but I mean, getting hit by a car in your athletic experience would be something that I would say would shape you and draw you and steer you into some places that you would have to navigate, like having to have gone there, not necessarily being hit by a car. But
so let's put this in a different context for just a minute when we talk about the So if you go to my website, there's a thing that says, let's talk about your personal practice. And there's actually a very nice list, I think. And it was created with, with collaborators. So it's not just mine, about the qualities and qualifications for a mindfulness teacher. But one of the things is, if we think about a swim instructor, right? You want someone usually who's swum. It's the rare coach, right, who can coach something that they haven't actually done themselves, and understands the technique. But also you want someone who can get in the water with you if you're struggling and pull you to shore. And it's the same with mindfulness. You want someone who's been in rough water, who's been underwater, who knows what to do when they're underwater, so that they can support you. And that's the level of expertise that we want with mindfulness instructors, because you can hit really tender, difficult experiences of being human. And if I haven't navigated my own tenderness and experience of being human, how can I possibly help you do it?
Yeah, it's amazing. That's and there's a lot of parallels with sort of being in the physical therapy space, right? As an athletic therapist, as a strength coach, as somebody who's working typically in the physical realms, having an understanding of the non-physical realms and understanding that these systems are completely interwoven goes a long way. It allows us to connect. We just had Friday night, we just had an opportunity to go and celebrate an athlete who won the Stanley Cup. And I took my son, and he got to hold the Stanley Cup. And this was amazing. But at no point in my career, and I think I posted about this as well, but at no point in my career did I ever think, man, I'm going to do this so that one day I'm going to be working with an athlete who wins the Stanley Cup and I go get to raise it. Never once in my career have I done that for glory. But seeing my son experience lifting the Stanley Cup next to a Stanley Cup champion, like holding the Stanley, hugging it while the Stanley Cup is being lifted up. This is why I do this. This is why I do this, to create moments like that for my son, to start to identify moments that sport can bring, and moments of sincerity, moments of authenticity. But in that moment, I also recognize that Anthony Sorelli is also somebody's son, and every athlete that we work with is somebody's kid. And that part of it for me took parenthood probably a little bit, as well as losing some athletes along the way that I've worked with that died younger than they should have. And, many of us experience that, but it's very eye-opening. And those pieces shift us to sort of that human perspective, that human connected piece. I think that as a mindfulness coach, that's a massive part, but also on the physical side as well, because they are interwoven.
You're gonna be annoyed with me, and I'm saying this with a smile, but it's right, like the lifting the trophy is one thing, but Anthony had this whole journey.
Absolutely.
And the journey was in and of itself valuable, with or without the trophy. And there were some I'm sure he's a human being, so there were tough places along that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And mindfulness gives us the capacity to hold both the the famous NBC, the agony and the ecstasy of sport and of life. But this, just knowing that it's not, and your son will come to learn over time what it took to get there. But it's not just the moment of lifting the cup. And this is what mindfulness gives us, is how do we embrace the whole journey, the challenges and the joys.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see it with athletes on a daily basis as well, with the physical, right? And the days that you cash out, and the days that you come to the gym and just flat out just don't do anything, or just sort of pick the weight up and put it back down without any intention behind it. You walk away and reflect back on that, and that was a wasted day, or I didn't want to be here, I don't want to be here. And we hear all these discussions, right, being in this realm on a regular basis with athletes. And you're exactly right, the journey is worth certainly much more than the end, than the finish line, I think. But the finish line is celebrated, and amazing. It was an amazing sort of last couple of years, actually. Anthony's won the cup twice in a row with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and just prior to that first Stanley Cup win, he was navigating a whole nother issue of not having a contract and not being tendered a contract. And we were in the pandemic, and all of these different pieces that were pouring in before signing a contract, and then going on to win 2 Stanley Cups and bringing it back home here, which was an amazing thing. COVID has highlighted a lot of these pieces. I think all of these things existed prior to COVID, but perhaps, I don't want to say silver lining, but perhaps just the reality of a pandemic, the reality of
well, it did let people pause. For some athletes, it was a huge boon. They got to recover. Certain female athletes got to have babies and get back into competitive shape. Other people, not so much of a boon. And, they were peaked for 2020. And, how do you help athletes navigate all of that? How do you help them remember that they're so much more than their performance? That's why I was kind of hesitant about the Stanley Cup thing, because we do, like, as a culture, we get so attached to that. I mean, and that's where the parents start pushing, and the coaches are like, win at all costs. And those moments are amazing, and they deserve to be celebrated and cherished. And we need to remember the number of people who win a Stanley Cup is, compared to let's just take Canada, the number of kids playing hockey in Canada, it's infinitesimal, the number who win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I just feel all of this makes too much sense and can't be overlooked. And we won't let too many cats out of bags, but we've had the opportunity to start working on a project. Yourself, another previous guest and colleague and close friend in Matthew Arnone and Jennifer Grant, and all of these pieces coming together as mindfulness in sport, and it's going to come soon. We don't need to release any details on that through this one here. Everyone will hear about it, I'm sure, sooner or later. But an amazing journey pairing all of that together, your experience in the mindful space, and having athletes that utilize these, I don't want to say techniques, but these introspective means of navigating performance, and really validating, I think, what I have been pushing as a practitioner through this channel and through my practice of late, since turning that corner to really push independence on athletes as opposed to dependence on myself as the practitioner. Right, my knee hurts. Yes, go get it checked out. Maybe you need some imaging. Maybe you need some help. Maybe you need some coaching. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what you put in and how much you understand. Going back to your early coach in gymnastics, understanding the body and what the body needs to do before you start doing the things with the body really makes a ton of sense. Beginners, people who are listening in here that listen to this first couple minutes, and then we'll end this so that you can have your Sunday night and we can get some rest. But you started with a beautiful practice at the beginning here. Perhaps somebody listening, that was the first time they've ever done mindfulness. Perhaps that was somebody's 900th time doing mindfulness in the past 60 days. Who knows? A practice. They're all different. It's never the same, and it's non-striving in nature. How do you navigate that? Because athletes tend to strive. Practitioners tend to strive. I want to take that skill and I'm going to do that, and then that's how I'm going to get everybody better. It's non-striving. It's curiosity, I think, is a big one that you use to describe mindfulness through your definition of it. But how do we walk through this? How do you navigate?
I think some easy ways, my CDs are on iTunes and Spotify and Amazon. Practices for kids, practices for teens, practices for adults. Mm-hmm. My sports ones aren't up yet. But you can start with just sitting with yourself for 5 minutes a day and just checking in, like how following your breath, and then maybe at the end taking a moment and thinking, how is my body? What information is my body giving me right now? Am I rested and ready to go? Do I maybe need a recovery day? Is that twinge a normal twinge from training and competing, or is that something that signals more serious injury? Checking in with my mind, like how is my mind? What's the pace of my mind? What's the content of my mind? Can I watch it without getting caught up in it? And then checking in with your heart. How am I feeling? Not trying to change anything or make it different, but just meeting yourself with kindness and curiosity as you are in this moment. It's a non-doing way that is actually transformative. And then there are specific ways for people to work with challenges and difficulties that we can do in another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of notes and a stunning capture there as well. I just feel the more we talk, the more we connect, the more we also start to connect with our community around us, and really not drive this outward, but it starts to resonate outward into the environment of practitioners and athletes and all the people that provide care and comfort and are a part of sort of the sport performance space. So with that, joy, mindfulness, compassion, competition, the 4 pillars of success of the Golden State Warriors. That's the Golden State Warriors, one of the top organizations in professional sports. Mindfulness is a part of that. It doesn't have to be a wooey thing. It doesn't have to be a scary thing. Joy joy is a part of that. That's a part that often athletes lose focus of because of the undertones of the competitive side. But if we can embrace both equally on some days, more on other days, whatever the case may be, but it's a great capture. And Amy, you've done an amazing job, obviously, summarizing this through your career. And this evening, it's session 88 here. We will go again next Sunday. Our guests are just in the midst of locking down. It's going to be a pair of guests. I hope next week they're just paring down their schedule. So we'll get back to that through the social media channels and let you know. But this has been absolutely amazing. And you've captured certainly an audience here this evening and our audience moving outward. It's stillquietplace.com if you want to find Dr. Amy Saltzman online. Her book, A Still Quiet Place for Athletes, a terrific read with a workbook mentality to it, where you can work through some practices. Obviously, she mentioned some of the other pieces through Apple and Spotify and all those different things, iTunes, I think it was as well. So Amy, you opened, I have been, we'll start a trend. The last 2 episodes I've closed with a reading from a book that I turn to on a regular basis through my practice as part of my mandated 30 minutes of sitting in a day. It's session 88. So I'm going to read from page 88 of this book, and we'll see where it goes. I think there's some resonance here to what we've talked about, and perhaps something to ponder into the future. I know mountains because I have stood on precipices and breathed. I know prairie because I have lain on my back and been absorbed by the sky. I know the ocean because I have immersed myself in it and felt the pull of its current. If I want to know life, I need to experience its wonder and breathe it in with every breath. If I want to know possibility, I need to see its immensity and allow it to absorb me. If I want to know faith, I need to surrender to it and feel it pulling me in its unseen direction. It's been Let's Chat session 88. It's Dr. Amy Saltzman. Amy, I'll let you say goodnight and you can close this thing out however you wish. I look forward to our conversation this week, our weekly discussion off the podcast. That one will come to fruition eventually on the podcast too, I'm sure. But appreciate your time as always. And over to you to close it out.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I'm happy to stay on with the people who are here and answer some questions if people want. And stay kind and curious.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And good night. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.